Welcome to traumaticbraininjury.com, the leading source for information on the web regarding resources for traumatic brain injury for survivors and families. My name is Stuart Cohen. Today's guest is Joanne Finnegan. Joanne is the Chief Executive Officer of Remed Recovery Care Centers, and over the last 20 years, Remed is one of the leading post-acute neurorehabilitation centers in the United States. Joanne Finnegan is a certified therapeutic recreational specialist by training and education. She is also the chairperson of the Board of Trustees of CARF, that's C-A-R-F, which is the Commission on the Accreditation of Rehab Facilities. CARF is the leading accreditation organization for rehabilitation services in the United States. Joanne Finnegan, welcome to traumaticbraininjury.com. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Joanne Finnegan is president of, or chief executive officer, I guess the title is,
Yes.
at Remed Recovery Services. I'd like to ask you some questions about how to evaluate a rehab facility. I know that survivors and some of their family members who are watching us have those kinds of questions. What does a family look for?
Well, I think it's important for a family to really know or try to get an idea of what they want. There are a couple of resources that can help to start that thought process. One would be a provider guide that is put out by the Brain Injury Association of America. The other is a guide of how to choose a provider that's put out by the CARF organization. And I think that those give some very good general questions to get started. I think families need to be comfortable with the facility that they're looking at. I always recommend touring. You have to see it.
All right, well, there's a lot of information in what you just said.
Yes.
So let me back up a little bit. CARF is the Commission for the Accreditation of Rehab Facilities, is that right?
Yes.
And I understand that you are the chairperson of the Board of Trustees of CARF, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Well, congratulations on your appointment to that position.
Thank you.
Just a simple question, but one of the things family members should look at, should they see if the facility is accredited?
Absolutely.
And the major accreditation resource is CARF?
Yes, it is.
And what is it that the family should ask to see? Is there a piece of paper or something to look at so that they know that it's an accredited facility?
They should actually have those certificates posted, and most facilities that would be CARF accredited would do that. There's also an easy way to check, which is you can go on to the CARF website, which is www.carf.org.
And that's CARF.org, O-R-G.
Yes.
And you'll be able to find a list of accredited facilities?
Yes, by state.
And also you could search for the name of that facility to see if it is in fact accredited?
Yes, you can.
All right, great. All right, so accreditation is one thing you can look for. Now, I assume that there are a range of types of facilities available. We've learned in other sections here on traumaticbraininjury.com that there are all sorts of traumatic brain injuries, from very severe to moderate to mild brain injury, all of which require care. I imagine there's a range of rehabilitation facilities available as well. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Why don't you tell us about the range?
Sure. Now, assuming that we're talking about someone who has come through a kind of the hospital gamut, so from trauma center potentially to acute hospital to then rehabilitation hospital, most people would then ultimately go to outpatient therapy from there. Once that's finished, they would then potentially go to what's called post-acute rehabilitation. So those are services that are focused more on home and community-based kinds of resources that would allow the person to learn how to live again back out in the community, return to work. So there's really hundreds of different variations of this.
All right. Now, let's just go a little slower through that transition. First, there's the trauma center, you said?
Correct.
And obviously that's an inpatient facility.
Yes.
Then you have a hospital setting, which is not for an acute injury, not where intensive care is required. Is that right?
Typically, yes.
And that could be the same hospital depending on the community.
Right.
And then after that, you talked about a rehabilitation hospital.
Yes.
Now, some of the people that are listening to us have had family members who were very recently diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. In fact, the family member may very well still be in the hospital. So why don't you tell us a little bit about rehab hospitals, what kind of treatment families can expect their family member, the survivor, to receive at that type of facility.
Well, there you're really focused on, different from the acute hospital where they may still be managing the medical issues and needs. Once the person gets to the rehabilitation hospital, it's really focused on that rehab side. So you're going to see a therapy team, typically an interdisciplinary team of physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech and language pathologist, recreational therapist, psychology, social work and discharge planning, and that's just a short list of who may all be involved with a case, and really focused on the brain injury needs and how to return that person to life in the community.
Okay. Now, I want to focus on just one particular member of the team that you were talking about. You said something about a discharge planner.
Yes.
We all know what doctors are and nurses are and therapists, but this is something that I think some of us haven't heard of before. What's a discharge planner?
It's really a person that's on the team that looks for what that next step will be. You know, as we all know, lengths of stay in hospitals are pretty short today. Even for someone that's had a brain injury, you're not going to get the number of days or weeks or months that you used to get. So the discharge planner really looks at resources and options for that person for the next step.
Right. And this is something the family should seek out?
Absolutely, and as early as possible.
And the purpose of the discussion is to find out what types of options are available for the next step.
Correct.
And you mentioned outpatient facilities and also inpatient facilities.
Yes.
Okay. What type of, generally, what type of facilities are available after a rehab center if someone still needs services? And also, what type of patient description are we talking about?
Sure. Well, I think, again, if it's someone that's had a mild brain injury, then they may stay connected to that rehabilitation hospital through what's called maybe an outpatient therapy department or potentially a day treatment kind of program.
So they're coming to the facility for services as they need them.
Correct.
And the family has to be involved in bringing them, obviously, if transportation is an issue. All right. And are there also inpatient facilities?
Yes. So if you take then that more moderate to severe kind of injury where the family is really not capable of taking that person home at that moment, then what you may look for is an inpatient rehabilitation facility in the community.
Okay. And all these things have costs attached to them?
Yes.
We'll talk about the costs in another section here on traumaticbraininjury.com in a few minutes. By the way, just before we end up, I wanted to ask you one question. You've been at ReMed, what, nearly 20 years now, I guess?
Yes.
And you mentioned something about lengths of stays in the hospital. I'm just curious, 20 years ago, with a, let's say a moderate, so we'll take a case that's somewhere in the middle, with a moderate traumatic brain injury, how much care could a survivor expect to receive in, let's say, a standard situation with normal group health insurance available?
Well, 20 years ago, Stuart, when I worked in inpatient rehabilitation, we saw patients for upwards of 6 to 9 months with a moderate brain injury.
That was in the hospital?
Yes, it was in the hospital.
And now, in 2004, how long do you see the patients?
From what I understand from my colleagues in that realm, they're lucky if they see somebody for 30 days to possibly 6 weeks.
Does it make a difference in the long-term care and treatment of the patients?
I believe it does.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Megan.
Thank you.